Hello everyone, Namaste. How are you all? It's nice to be back here and see the bath is back again. And we keep saying this each time we do a new episode, but then this time we are really having a nice vibe to actually talk to you all about something. And Lovepreet, as usual, our co-host is here. Say hi, Lovepreet. How are you?
Hi, I am good. Or how are you guys? Drop your, halchal in the comments below.
And in Seedhi Bath, we always talk about anything that comes to our mind, and the guests also share their thoughts about a lot of things. But one topic we've never picked up so far is music. Who doesn't love music? There's not a person who does not, who can live without music. So I think that's something uh, interesting and something fresh for the podcast as well. So we have Miss Madhumita Bhaskar. She's a senior software professional turned entrepreneur, and she's a multifaceted artist and a Hindustani classical music student. And she's currently a senior disciple of Professor Milind Malshe. If I'm not wrong, he's from IIT Bombay. And yeah, so there's so much to her credit, which I can't keep on talking about right now because there's a time constraint. But I'd love to hear from Miss Madhumita about her initiative, which is known as Shruta House, and it's a very interesting initiative that she's taken up because it's all about classical music and bringing it closer to the younger generation and even to us, because even we feel at times that classical music has a lot of things which is like which goes over our head. So, ma'am, please do the honors. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to this very sweet podcast series that you guys have. Lovely to meet you, Pawan and Lovepreet, and all of your fans out there. My name is Madhumita, and I'm the founder of Shruta House. We are into inculcating interest in Indian classical music among preschool children and young families who are new to this art form. So our programs are focused on creating a lot of interest in this music and not just learn it formally. Of course, there are many schools who are helping all of us in learning this music in the Indian classical music forms in a more formal manner. But what we do is keep the kids so engaged and enthusiastic about the music that they become forever learners and lovers of Indian classical music. So this is a gist of what we do. And we are a very young startup. We started in November 2020 during the pandemic. And we started doing, we launched a couple of pilot programs, all online, of course. And imagine, having kids at home all day and trying to launch something very fancy for them, something very musical, and having them, sit on the screens and try to interact with the educators. So I think it was something we were unsure of at the beginning, but I think it turned out so well. We have a huge, ardent lovers of classical music now, aged 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's such a joy to induct Indian classical music into the modern families today. So I'm very happy, very proud, and again very excited to be here.
I think the co-host we have right now is also has been trained in singing for a couple of years during her childhood. So I think she has a lot of questions to ask you. Right, Lovepreet?
Yeah, I mean, of course, whenever you hear about music, there's this very special feeling that comes up. So I was very fond of music as a child, and I used to have a very decent voice. Half of the audience won't believe this, but yeah, I did used to have a good voice. And in the school, my mom was always very keen on teaching, me putting me into music, and then eventually in classical dance and all of that. So my curiosity question right now is, ma'am, I do relate with you. I understand when you say that classical music is kind of, it can never lose its grace. That's one thing. But of course, why do we have to bring it back is a weird question, because it should not have gone ever. So from you, what I'm trying to learn is that number one, what brought you to music, since you are very, I mean, of course, you're a passionate singer. I want to know how your journey started and how you ended up being, landed into this career in the first place. And then what really motivates you, or what do you do about those kids or those people who don't understand and relate with classical music that much? I mean, there's one set of audience who can understand and relate with it. There's other set of audience, pretty much our generation, which cannot relate with it so much sometimes. So
Hmm.
what does Shota do or you do to bring back that enthusiasm in children and youth to connect with this kind of music?
Hmm. Great question, Love. I think my journey started when I was very young because I belong to a family which is very fond of Indian classical music. So, being a South Indian, I think we listen to a lot of Carnatic music at home in general. And I got introduced. I started learning Bharatnatyam. You know, all the kids when they are 6, 7, they start going to Bharatnatyam lessons and music lessons. So I also, and my parents realized that I was very fond of music and rhythm, and I could sing in tune. You know, for that age, I think that was something that they were very excited about, and they sent me to Bharatnatyam classes, and I continued dancing for a bit. And when I turned 11,
Hmm.
I think that's when I got introduced, through a common friend to Professor Milind Malshe, who is an exponent of Jaipur Atrauli Gharana of Hindustani vocal music. So
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate, and he's a very senior musician and scholar. And I was this 11-year-old who was very interested in learning music, and I said, I want to do this. And he gracefully accepted me as a student, and I think it's the best thing that has happened to me in my life. And I was a very enthusiastic student. I used to love the idea of abstract music, the idea of rag music. You know, classical music is rag based, as in it has a certain, it's a very deep concept, but you can abstract it, right? You can put music in a certain rhythm cycle and try to sing impromptu, right? It's an extempore kind of singing, and I used to love that idea. You know, it's not bana banaya music. You have a structure, but then you have the freedom to explore it the way you want, and that freedom really, really caught my eye. And of course, the rhythm aspect. You have to stick to the rhythm. You have to, go here and there and fall back on the beat, and so these small things, identifying which rag. So for me, it was more of a game and to find out how these things work, and I used to really enjoy. So I think that that fundamental joy or the wonder element in learning music, by God's grace, I think just kept me very motivated at that age, because then you have to practice some very monotonous things at the beginning, right? You have to keep
Correct.
doing things till you get better and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think having a guru like Malche sir and his way of communicating, musical, elements, and his regular music sessions at home, he used to sing every week. So attending all that, being in the ecosystem of people who love music and to watch them love the music, and it just comes to you, right? So being in that environment and having parents who support you, and of course your voice, which is not in your hands, is something God gives you. So kind
Correct.
of all of these things put together made me a very happy music student. I think I must say that I was a very happy student. There was no compulsion, there was no force, there was very natural connection that I had with my teacher, and so it was a fun learning journey. And that's how I began learning music, and I'm still learning. I still learn from over Skype. Me being in Bangalore and Sir being in between Mumbai and Pune, right? So, and it has been such a journey all throughout. And
Yeah.
talking about building this kind of interest or this spark or this joy is something I wanted to pass on, right? Because
Mm.
there is so much joy and you want to share it. I mean, it's true for anything. It's not just for this. So whatever it is that you're passionate about, you want to just spread that joy to people, right? At the end of the day, whether you start a company or whether you do it as a private, in any other way, right? So this joy, the sharing of joy of music or classical music specifically, because it seems very far fetched, like you said, right? I don't get it. समझ नहीं आता है क्या है, slow है, whatever it is that we all feel sometimes. But there is a lot to it, and that joy of figuring out what that is and being able to experience
Mm.
is something I wanted to really give from
Hmm.
me.
Wow.
That's something I have to offer, is something I realized. And I became a mom, 5 years ago, and I had my little baby, and I used to talk to him, I used to sing to him, and we had a nice connection. It didn't seem like he didn't understand. There is a lot of sometimes that barrier which says I don't
Hmm.
understand music. You don't have to understand much at the beginning, right? You just feel it, you
Hmm. Hmm.
experience it, and over a period of time, the more you like the music, the more your interest to understand increases, and the more interested you are, the faster you can learn, right?
Right.
If you don't have interest, then learning becomes a little slow. So our job, then I decided, why not build that interest? So kids go and say, I want to learn, I want to learn, I want to
Hmm.
learn this raga. So they will look for the teacher, they will look for the inspiration, they will, contribute to the joy of learning. And that I think is a huge aspect of any learning. So I took a subject which is Indian classical music, which, like we all know, is, kind of complex sometimes, but there is definitely a lot of scope for joy and exploration. And
Yeah.
this spirit of exploration is something Shruta House caters to, and we focus on that. We focus on the ability of, our ability to take this music to children as young as 2, 3, 4, and their parents who are very young parents, 30, 40 year olds who are working in the corporate world, and they have started to enjoy the music thanks to the kids classes. So all the parents now sit for the kids classes, and it's become such a family bonding, hours when I spend with them. So I think this is one of the programs I do for kids, for Hindustani music. And Shrote House also has some other inspirational programs, like we launched Little Khayal series during the pandemic again. So all the musicians were at home, all the kids are at home, and I'm like, what to do and be something creative, and things are not so positive around, the
Hmm.
pandemic and all that. So we said, okay, let's do a series, let's have the kids interview musicians. Okay, so they'll be like, oh, okay, first of all, it's a 5, 7 or 10 year old kid talking to me, and they're asking questions. How do you sing? How do you do this? What is this instrument? Don't you get bored practicing so many times? It's such natural questions, and it became such a beautiful experience for all of us sitting in the at home, and all the musicians got so felt so positive. And so we launched this series, and it was an inspirational series for parents, kids, and musicians. And these are just a couple of programs, and we have launched a few others recently, and if time permits, we'll talk about those.
Wow. I think it's a wonderful initiative, and usually I mean, one thing is to learn that I felt very strongly that art, is something which is very hard to learn in this digital era. There's a gap, and especially when your music and dance or spirituality are things which you can learn from your guru when you're in person. But I think the pandemic has eventually taught us to just go with whatever we have and kind of learn things even digitally, and you're doing it so beautifully that even if I'm imagining it, the imagination is so beautiful. And like you mentioned, classical music is generally complex, and it's a little not so easy to get through it. So again, two very small questions arise from here. One is that I want your opinion on, when people say music or singing is a blessing and it cannot be developed over years. It's only you get a blessing and you can work on it, but somebody who is not blessed with a good voice can never get into it. Is this true or not? And how much truth is there in this statement? And number two is that, is it because of the rigidity or the strictness of classical music, or in general the discipline that is to be followed to learn Carnatic classical music specifically? Is it that thing which does makes people disinterested, or they just shift to this modern music, which I don't know what it is, I don't want to comment on it, but then I don't know what this basically is, and it just sounds very easy because it's like I'm speaking, you put duk 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 music behind it and it's a music album.
Hmm.
So I really want to understand, your opinion on these two questions.
Hmm. I think, first, for your first question, talent, right? Talent is something which helps you. It just eases your pursuit, right? If you have, say, talent to sing,
Hmm.
it becomes easy for you to pick up on the musical elements or reproduce music through your voice, right? That is there. But we are talking about appreciating music. For that, you don't need any kind of talent, right? There are two ways of looking at music learning. And this is something which has got pronounced after we started our venture. One is you learn music to perform music. Okay. For that, you need talent, a fair bit of talent. Okay. But you need a lot of consistent practice and a very good guide, guru, teacher to be with you in that journey of reaching to a point where you're able to perform for audiences. The other side is you're learning as a hobby, as something that you like to learn, whether or not you're too good at singing or whatever else. If you're not good at singing, pick up an instrument. There is no way, that no one's stopping you from doing that. It's something that you should do, in fact. A lot of times we're stopped by, oh, I'm not talented, I don't sound good, all that. But you know what has that got to do with your joy of experiencing music, right? It will come. You may not be very talented, but you will all of us take years to reach to a point where you're able to sound good to somebody else. But then you have to be you have to enjoy the process within you first, I think. And I've heard this from so many artists also that I've interacted with. What you experience as a music practitioner within you also reflects in what you're producing as music to all whoever is listening to you. But at a young age, you don't worry about all these things. You want to learn. I think
Yeah.
the key is to be able to enjoy the learning
Enjoy
process.
the learning. Right.
Nobody, and if you're fortunate enough, there isn't anybody telling you don't do this, you're not good at it, or those kinds of things. But for Indian classical music, it's a great commitment. Okay,
Yeah.
you have to be extremely committed in terms of time, effort, and in terms of your interest and motivation to pursue this art form. Okay, it is a very deep music. It's not entertainment, right? A lot of times we are in a cult where, like you said, there's a lot of entertainment everywhere. Maze karo, dum dum dum. This fast music kind of, and pop music everywhere. You have pop attached to all genres of music. This pop, that pop. But again, all that is for entertainment, giving you a high, giving you a chance to dance together, drink together. I don't know what else, right? Just have fun, relax, or that kind of music, right? Very entertaining. But classical music is seldom entertaining. It's entertaining in a very different intellectual way
Yeah.
or a very spiritual way. But for an apparent average audience, it will seem too much to delve into. I don't invest my time and all this to understand, and like again the word comes understand. I feel, it's my opinion, that you have to give the chance to yourself. So move a little bit, have that little bit of exploration element in your life, because you're already entertained a lot. TikTok, you are entertained. Instagram, you're entertained. Whatever, Netflix, you're entertained pretty much from all people around you. But give yourself that few hours in a day, or 30 minutes in a day, to explore yourself with yourself and with people who enable you to do that. I think when you have this balance, you kind of know how to place Indian classical music in your life, which can be so rewarding. And it's only about making people realize how rewarding it can be.
I don't think we need to add anything to
Rafpreet, are
this answer.
you satisfied or there's more
Super
to explore now?
satisfied. Super
I'm
satisfied.
so glad. In
Like,
fact, I would love to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
in fact, I
Madhumita, there
would
was
love to
an
have an
observation.
opportunity.
Yeah, there's an observation I have. So,
Yeah.
I mean, in Telugu households and say across South India, you have this tradition of growing up with the folk music, the folk elements, and the folk level of classical music and that style of music, and which we see in, let's say, in the Tyagaraja or other similar music, Tyagaraja's
Hmm.
Kirtanas, whatever. But then over a period, we find that there's a fusion that's been made at times. So there is a fusion of the original Carnatic music. And I'll say Carnatic, I'll talk about Carnatic because that's what I'm fully aware of, at least because
Hmm.
coming from the south. So, do you
Hmm.
think such fusion, sells well, or is it really enthusing people to take up Carnatic music, or let's say any form of classical music? When we create a fusion between the modern and that uh, this elements, do you think that is actually getting more people to take that up, or is that a real thing? Or is that happening, or do you see it around? And to follow up, I'd like to ask is, in Carnatic music, so there's a certain very strict set of rules and a lot of things. And you mentioned something called a gharana a little earlier. So can
Hmm.
you also tell the audience what this gharana is? And yeah, over to you.
Hmm. Okay. So first of all, you mentioned folk music and you say Carnatic. So these are different genres of music. Okay. Indian classical music is broadly divided into two categories. One is North Indian classical music, which is Hindustani music, which I practice, and there is South Indian classical music, which is Carnatic music, which I don't actively practice. I have listened to a lot of it, but I practice and listen more to Hindustani music, which is the North Indian. There are various folk music which are home to our country, and because we are so diverse, there are various every region has genres of folk music which keep our country so colorful musically. Okay, when we talk about fusion, um, I think fusion is again a very interesting topic because it depends. Okay, fusion is maybe just a way to involve two, three different genres of music and try to put them together in a way that might or might not attract audiences. It depends on who you're targeting, also, right? If you're wanting to present a piece of fusion music to a fairly knowledgeable audience who is aware of classical music or who know a bit more about what this music involves, they may or may not be critical about it. It depends. It depends on the personal taste of whoever is listening to that form. But I feel as I might as well speak positively about various things that we are talking about. I personally do not enjoy all forms of fusion, but there are some forms which catch your ear, and because it involves these different genres, one of them could be Carnatic music or could be Hindustani. There could be elements of it in that overall that piece of music, which could be appealing, right? So it's a way in which, so if you give it to a new audience, they might enjoy that piece of music without realizing, okay, isme ye tha, isme wo tha. It was overall the impact of the music that really caught his or her eye or ear, right? So in general, fusion is a nice way to explore. If you are a musician, then you would want to explore, oh, what do I do with this, how do I mix this sound or get this instrument in, or this style of singing in, right? So it's a creative space, so there is nothing right or wrong in it. But if you are able to describe the music in a way that, okay, this has Carnatic music element, Hindustani element, pop element, a little bit of hip hop mix. So these days, there is this dance group, I think you must have seen, they mix Bharatnatyam and hip hop, right? It's just a way to try to see what comes out. What's the joy that you get? Is it impacting people or not? So a lot of critical takes on that, and a lot of acceptance also. So again, fusion might be a way to expose newer audiences to these elements, just that they exist. But then to have the impact of those individual musical genres as they are on people, it needs to be given to them just the way it is. right? It needs to be the individual musical genres that form part of fusion music also need to be given to them as is in the way they actually have been existing so far, so that people know this is what it is and has been put in or mixed with a few other musical genres, right? So that way the understanding improves, and people can then decide on what they want to listen to more. Maybe a mix is better for them, or maybe just the individual element is something like, I didn't know this existed. Only because I heard it in this song, I know, oh, Hindustani music is there. Let me explore Hindustani music. That could be a way for a channel for people to, get to know about the music or the sounds of it, and then go and explore what is it in detail through some very traditional performances by experts of the musical form, right? So there's a fine line when you want to not conclude about any musical genre just by listening to a certain one or two pieces of song, but you have to give yourself that time and that experience to be able to start to appreciate it better over a period of time, right? So this is my take on fusion, and may the good music to reach all the beautiful hearts. Yes.
Lovely.
Are you satisfied? Now you tell me.
I actually had whatever you talked about and sort of exposing the audience to that. I actually felt that myself. I had that journey. So as a kid, I would listen to very limited music because I was always into the film element and watching films and just listening to less music. Somehow, after a point, there was a point when I started listening to proper music, which is classical, a mix of everything. And then I started to appreciate the power of music to sort of
Yeah.
lighten ourselves and then enjoy the music. So that journey is something relatable. When you said that, I actually had that journey where I got exposed to a lot of fusion music. And then I slowly branched into trying to explore a lot of this Carnatic and other stuff. So it was actually very engaging that way. So I completely agree with you that it's that way we can actually introduce it to people to explore it. That way.
I think, music, I am just guessing from here that music also gives you a sense of taking questions very gracefully and answering them very nicely. Here, Madhumita ma'am, a compliment for you. You don't leave a scope for us to ask a follow-up question because you just clarify all the aspects of it so well. And Carnatic music is specifically something I came across very recently. And our common friend Samir, who's like a big, again, a very fond of music, and he has very good distinction and understanding of music, is always listening to Carnatic, especially in the mornings, and he's like making us listen to that in the car as well. So that's where he was not talking about these very small details of the music video, and I was like not caring too much, because when you don't have a lot of knowledge about it, you think that okay, maybe it's just good to hear, but maybe I don't know the details of it. So from there I can make an estimate, but it is very soothing and peaceful. And I agree with you, when a thing does not come to you in the original format. To quote an example, a foodie example, they make versions of dosas all across India, and when you eat it, it's like terrible. And then when you really want to eat dosa, you go to the south of India, you eat the original Madrasi, or in Chennai you eat the original dosa, and you're like, oh, thank God, right? So and everywhere else you're eating pizza dosa, Shezwan dosa, this dosa, that dosa, and it's just horrible. Sometimes that fusion is too terrible to try.
That's actually
So,
a good comparison to way the way you put it. That's actually a good one.
certain things should not be mixed, Fanta, Maggie, chocolate momos, these are not good combinations. And similarly, certain fusions, music fusions, just don't work for anyone. So
Yeah, in fact, some people like it. That is the whole point. There are some people who like some things, and these are very subjective. I mean, it's generalized, we can't do, right? This is
absolutely.
good or not. So it's your taste. The more you are developing your own taste, the more you learn to appreciate something in a very justified manner. Instead of imposing others' opinions and my opinion, you have to develop the taste for it, and for any art form, especially Indian classical music. So I think that's a beautiful analogy. I'll also think about it. Which are the not so good combinations?